Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves. How's it going, all you minties? Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me today for my advanced look at the X-Treme X-Men Omnibus Volume 2 from Marvel Comics. So let's go ahead and get started. And welcome back, everybody. Now, before we get started, a big thank you to David Gabriel and the fine folks at Marvel for sending us an advanced copy of this omnibus. This omnibus is due out in the direct market and book market on September 24th or 25th, depending on where you get your books. And it's been a long time coming. This book has had a lot of delays. It was supposed to have come out last year, but here it finally is. It's real, and then it finishes out that particular era of X-Treme X-Men. So now your Volume 1 will no longer be lonely on that shelf. By the way, both of these are the direct market covers. We'll look at the standard edition cover here in a second. And more importantly for me, I can finally give my brother these old trade paperbacks. Look at this. Look how far we've come. The trade paperbacks don't even line up. This one is shorter than these right here. This one has a different spot. Anyway, we have come a long way from trade paperbacks. Oh my gosh, I remember searching forever for that Volume 4 Mekanix. But back to this book. So, what we have here is the direct market cover, as I mentioned earlier. On the left-hand side is your standard edition cover. Both of the covers supplied by Salvador Larroca. Both of the spines, even though different, we have Wolverine on the standard edition cover and then Rogue on the direct market cover. Both of those also supplied by Salvador Larroca. But everything underneath the dust jacket and then the back and the flaps are the same. So let's shift the focus back to this. I had to get this, even though I didn't get the standard of Volume 1. I always loved this homage cover to the issue number 1. So yes, the standard edition had the issue number 1 cover, which I will show right there. So yes, it's an homage to that cover. Love it. And this time around, we have Gambit on the team, Bishop, Cannonball, Sage, still looking lovely as ever, and Storm, still leading the X-Treme X-Men, and of course, Rogue. And over here, we have the title, X-Treme X-Men, Claremont, Bobillo, Cordy, the Marvel logo, and X-Treme X-Men, Claremont, Bobillo, Gordy, and Rogue around there. And then we have Volume 2, the Marvel Omnibus logo. Chris Claremont concludes his most extreme X-Men series of all. Yes, Extreme. That's what it's called. X-Treme X-Men. And then Marvel logo, all of the textless covers. ISBN, retail price being $100. And underneath the dust jacket, we do have similar designs to Volume 1 right there. We have Cannonball here on the left and Rogue and Gambit on the right-hand side. A little bit of the synopsis and then a little bio on the creators like Chris Claremont. I'm surprised Juan Bobillo kicks it off or is on top of Igor Cordy, or Igor Cordy as Chris Claremont calls him, and he's worked with the gentleman many times. But over here, we have the design very similar to that of Volume 1, where you have the red X in the background and the characters in the foreground. This time around, by Igor Cordy, or Igor Cordy. I just said I would call him Igor like Chris Claremont. But anyway, I do find this really interesting because this is from a particular panel. These are from other panels, and I think I understand what they were trying to do. But I do need to comment on, this is the first time that we've had skids on the art on board. I love that. Yes! And then, of course, lovely Magma there, Sunspot. But what I find interesting is that they added another Sage, even though she's right there. So maybe they were supposed to add Storm. I don't know. And then Sean right there. But that's what underneath the dust jacket looks like. So we are going to open this book up. And if you're wondering, by the way, where I'm putting this is the hardest decision ever. Because as you all know, please ignore the microphone, that when it comes to X-Men, I love putting these in chronological order. So I am putting it right over there after Eve of Destruction and before New X-Men, because I feel like Eve of Destruction sets the events of this up, and New X-Men is kind of doing his own thing. Morrison was doing their own thing in New X-Men, and then of course Uncanny by Chuck Austin. But that's where I'm going to put it. Not sure where everybody else is putting their book. But now we can go ahead and get started. Okay, let's go ahead and crack this omnibus open. We have these orange, yellowish end sheets. In volume 1, we had red end sheets. So it's kind of like the exact opposite of this title page right here. There's that Igor Cordy Wolverine. And we have more Igor Cordy there. And then your credits. So you have Chris Claremont, of course, writing the entirety of this book. And also Juan Bobillo joining him for the Mekanix miniseries with Marcelo Sosa on inks. And Ed Tadeo on colors. And then Tom Orzechowski on lettering. Now, X-Treme X-Men, we do have Igor Cordy doing all of the pencils. However, the inks are done by different people, including Scott Hanna, and depending on the inks, Igor Cordy's artwork really stands out, but he inks himself on 36 and 37, and you can tell right away how different it is. You have Liquid doing the colors and the lettering by Tom Orzechowski, and then over here, we do have a little bit of X-Men Unlimited, and that's drawn by the phenomenal Paul Smith with Brian Reber on colors, and then Milo Manara, the legendary Milo Manara. My gosh, wait till you see this artwork. And then Dave Stewart, also a legend on his own, doing the colors there. So we kick it off with issue number 1 of Mekanix. So collected in here is Mekanix 1 through 6, and then X-Treme X-Men 25 through 46. X-Women, that's the Manara story, number 1, and then material from X-Men Unlimited number 39. This book has 816 pages and retails for $100. Now, this is again taking place immediately after Volume 2. We've had some not really a crossover, but kind of going back to the X-Mansion with the Schism storyline. But what Chris Claremont does is, he's like, I'm not going to leave Kitty Pryde out there. If you haven't read Eve of Destruction, something horrible happens to one particular character in general, and it's one of those things that affected Kitty Pryde, so she's like, I have to leave the team. I can't stay here. And when she leaves the team, it's for good. Like, it's one of those moments, minor spoilers, by the way, one of those moments that Professor Xavier honors her wishes. After something horrible happens, she leaves the X-Men to be forgotten. As in, Professor Xavier wipes away her file to go and live a life of her own. And what she does is she goes back to Chicago. This, again, is after the events of the new X-Men, mainly E for Extinction, and what happened there, and how she's dealing with the ramifications of losing, again, minor spoilers for E for Extinction, but losing her father, who was at Genosha. And she wasn't there to protect him. So what she does is she enrolls in school, she works at a bar, and this is where her and Sean get reunited, Karma from the New Mutants. And she's just trying to be a regular girl, regular student that happens to be a mutant, of course. And, of course, trouble comes looking for them. Now, we had a little bit of the story from X-Men Unlimited in the previous volume, so you got a little bit of Kitty Pryde, but Chris Claremont's like, I'm not going to leave her alone. She has to come back to the X-Men some way. So I love that he was also including her in this. We do have a new mutant that appears through these very pages who will end up joining Excalibur. So there are actually some things that Chris Claremont takes from this particular era of X-Treme X-Men and moves over to his Excalibur run. And here, let me just show you. So after a big explosion at this university, we get to meet Shola Nkosi, who again will play a bigger part in the Excalibur series by Chris Claremont. Not the classic one with Alan Davis, but the newer one with like Calypso and those characters. But what this does is Kitty Pryde is trying to get on with her life. There's an experiment at one of her classes that goes wrong. It kind of blows up. And people are still hating on mutants. That hasn't changed. Just because she's trying to escape. Because she can, right? Like, she's this really pretty girl who can hide the fact that she's a mutant. And when people find out that she's a mutant, that's when people turn on her. My favorite thing about this, though, this series is phenomenal, by the way. If you haven't read Mekanix, it is so underrated. I don't hear enough people talk about it when they talk about Chris Claremont's X-Men, because I think most people lump in everything, oh, when Chris Claremont came back to X-Men, it just wasn't as good as it used to be. There is some truth to that, but a lot of that also has to do with the times. I mean, we were living in different times, and his writing style had to change. But I think he handled this series so amazing, because she's dealing with survivor's guilt. She's dealing with PTSD, and she's dealing with the loss of not just her father, but loss of like all these people that died in Genosha. And one very important soul that she loved so much is gone. So she's going to therapy, and she's like talking about these problems with her therapist. And I thought that was a really interesting and unique and powerful way to kickstart this particular miniseries, where we haven't seen Kitten for a while. We call her Kitty for a while. I'm so used to her just, going on adventures with Wolverine, or just becoming some kind of badass samurai, or just figuring out some kind of mystery with Rachel. It's those kind of adventures that I was so used to seeing her. But then her dealing with real life issues like that, I thought was so amazing and such a great progress for a character. But then again, we are talking about Chris Claremont. So there's a mystery here with some nanotechnology sentinels that get out. There's a whole group of people that hate mutants. And at the end of the day, it's still Kitty Pryde going to school here. Now, it won't be the last time we see her, or of course Shola, or Sean for that matter. Now, back to X-Treme X-Men. Now, when X-Treme X-Men kicks off here, Wolverine guest stars, because, hey, it's Wolverine. We need him to guest star. And it's also during this time that the X-Men 2, X-Men United movie was coming out. Now, this is post Salvador Roca art. He still provides every single one of the covers, but it is just Igor Cordy doing the pencils, as we saw in the credits. And the very first story they kick it off with is God Loves, Man Kills 2, which is my favorite. Like, if you were to ask me what my favorite comic book was, it's God Loves, Man Kills. My favorite, not just my favorite X-Men comic, but my favorite comic book of all time. It is such a powerful story. And to come back and do a sequel, I thought, oh, do we really need one? I mean, of course we don't need one, but part of X-Men United was based on God Loves, Man Kills, so I get it. And who else to do it than Chris Claremont? I'm surprised they didn't try to get like Bob McLeod to come in and draw it. Or Brett Blevins, or somebody that had like a classier style that Claremont had worked with. But like I mentioned, Igor Cordy's artwork really has a range here. When he's not rushed and doing 3 or 4 comics a month, you can tell he pays attention to detail. Like, there's some insane details in his art. So what the story is William Stryker, the televangelist who almost wiped out all of mutant kind in that original story, he is freed from his confines. Like, he's going through he's serving prison time, right? But Lady Deathstrike is the one that breaks him out. And in the process, he ends up kidnapping, or rather manipulating, Shadowcat. So then Shadowcat is immediately in an X-Men story right after the Mekanix story. And what this does, though, is this ends up going into a town. And this particular town is just full of what appears to be humans, but then later turns out to be mutants, maybe? And that's the Mount Haven town. And there is a character that is very much like William Stryker there, and that is this particular preacher. Or he's the minister of this particular town, and his name is Paul. Boy, you comic book fans love you some Paul names. But this is when things get a little strange, and also a different type of role for the character of Stryker to play. But it is cool to see Kitty Pryde back in action along with the X-Treme X-Men. And of course, she's like, well, I'm not really back, but here's my calling card, and you can call me whenever you need me. The next story arc here has the return of Rogue and Gambit. Now, in the first volume, something happened that they had to leave the team. And what this focuses on is the human-free zone in California. So you do have some mutants living there, and that's where Anna resides. So Rogue, again, using her comic book movie name, the X-Men Fox movie name. Mystique, even though that's not Mystique, she's having a nightmare here, but it is the Mystique from the movies. This is when they were trying to like tie it in closer to the movies, and I get it, right? Like, you have the corporate synergy. I love the fact that we do have Cannonball now playing a part of the team. This is also the return of Amara and also the return of Roberto da Costa, best of friends, together again for this particular storyline where we do have this town in California that is human-free. However, there is this thing, this being that is kind of playing the villain. Yes, right here. This is Elias Bogan. And Elias is kind of manipulating things and being the puppet master and leading into the next story, or rather the final story arc. The next story arc is about Storm. I do love me some Storm. I love when she is the solo focus of a story. But this is her just kind of being on her own and traveling to Japan. And what is an X-Men story set in Japan that doesn't feature Yukio? Come on, you know she had to be in the story, especially when Storm's back in town. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to break into this arena and go undercover because apparently they have this illegal arena where mutants are forced to fight each other. But this is where we get a new version, or actually two new versions. We do get some other cameos appearing through here of Callisto. And Callisto appears through here changed. She's got tentacle arms. And this Storm's like, what? How did you get tentacle arms? Well, the answer lies with another appearance by this lady here, who looks a lot like Marilyn Monroe. Now, if you don't want to know who this lady really is, spoilers, I guess. But who this is Mask. Now, we haven't seen Mask in the pages of X-Force when Shatterstar stabbed him in the back. But this is the way that Mask is appearing, because Mask can change his face, right? So he chooses to choose Marilyn Monroe, but not only her face, her whole body. And who really is behind all this? Well, I will say, I hope you read the pages of Uncanny X-Men by Chris Claremont when he came back. It's also found in the Revolution Omnibus. And speaking of Revolution Omnibus, I do need to say something really quick. There is more to Claremont X-Men that has been collected in oversized format. Of course, we've got like the X-Men Forever. We're getting X-Men The End collected in that Marvel The End Omnibus. But there is also the return of X-Men, of X-Men and Chris Claremont. Even though that does sound right. There's also the return of Chris Claremont for the second time to Uncanny X-Men after Grant Morrison leaves, New X-Men, and then Joss Whedon kicks off Astonishing X-Men, and that's where Chuck Austin took over the adjectiveless X-Men, and then eventually it was Peter Milligan, but Chris Claremont took over Uncanny. And that era is called the Reloaded era. That has not been collected in omnibus format, and there is enough material for it to be collected in omnibus format. And the final story in here is the return of a classic character. I'm not going to spoil, but it is the fight against that one villain I was talking about, Elias Bogan. How he's kidnapped, or she maybe has kidnapped Bishop, and now the X-Men have to go and rescue Bishop. And it's got this whole, like, when people are like, oh man, Claremont's into BDSM, and I'm like, yeah, right, whatever, man, that only happened like a couple times. And then I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh well, maybe it happened a little more, you know, maybe there's something to that, but hey, whatever. You know, you got a super villain like that. What else are they going to be into? Anyway, what the hell am I saying? Yes. So you have not just the X-Treme X-Men who've gone through a shake-up, but you have some returning characters. You have Magma. Skids, man! That's the cover, or that's the image they use for that. And then Roberto da Costa, Sunspot, coming back to help out the team against this big fight. And during this time, we also have some, well, one particular human character that has joined them because of horrible things that happen in California to her family. And that is the character right here of Maria D'Encanto. And we also have the lawyer, Evangeline Wheaton here, can shapeshift into like a dragon. But this is the big fight against Elias, and you can find out how that ends and how the book wraps up and who comes back towards the end of that, which I found really awesome. This is the story that takes place in between Uncanny X-Men 173 and 174, I believe. But it is more of Yukio and Storm's adventure, just out in Japan again. And then at the very end, or in the very back, we have X-Women is actually collected in oversized format. And I love that about this book. So what exactly is this story about? Well, it's Manara's art. That's really all you need to know. And Chris Claremont writing these stories. But what it is Rogue ends up inheriting this villa on this Greek island. And the ladies want to take a vacation. So it's Shadowcat is, I think Rachel was being called Marvel Girl at the time, and also Psylocke and Storm. However, Marvel Girl ends up getting kidnapped, and then it becomes an adventure. So now it is up to Psylocke. I forgot Psylocke. How could I forget Psylocke was there? She's on the freaking cover. And a couple of other appearances there. Now, this is Mila Manara, who draws absolutely he is known for drawing stunning women. And the book is called X-Women, Having a Vacation. So you are going to see some of them in bikinis, but I mean, it's Chris Claremont also having fun with these characters. So there are some good character moments in here. It's not just TNA, as some people would probably refer this to when they see the cover and they see who's attached to it. I mean, when you have Chris Claremont writing the story, there's a little bit more to it than that. Now, that's all I will say about that. I wish I could show you more of the art. It's stunning, especially in that format. In the back, we have the extras, like Igor Kordy's sketches and character designs, and more character designs for parties. And then original artwork here, internal artwork. And I wouldn't go back to these particular pages that he does to kind of show you the difference in the inkers. And then more original pages here, especially when Igor ends up inking it. Oh, Paul Smith. But let me just show you. Like, we have something like this, and this isn't bad at all, but this is also when he was doing about 2 to 3 issues a month, and somebody is inking it. Now, when he takes his time, we have something like this, where there's just an insane amount of details on the characters, and like these insane angles and buildings, and I kind of just glazed over that at first, and the panel layouts. It's like he can focus a lot more on the art, and it just makes for amazing panels. Like, oh man, Storm's choice though to go undercover, that outfit. I don't know about those particular bangs. What am I talking about? I'm not judging her bangs. Where is this one? There's this, yes, this splash page right here. I don't know. I saw the pencils and I thought that is just beautiful. Like, the pencils look great and the finished product looks great. Because I know people are very divisive when it comes to Igor Kordy's artwork. This is actually inked by Scott Hanna. But you can definitely tell when it's a different inker doing his stuff and just paying more, that's Bobillo's art, paying more attention to the finishes. Now let's look really quick at the binding. 816 pages, and the book is sewn binding. This one is printed at the Donley printer. So we saw some, let's go back to it. Beautiful spreads like that. The paper stock still, it's not as thick as they used to be. Marvel Omnis used to be really thick, but that's not necessarily the best thing, because as some of us that have collected these for a long time, those pages, people were worried about the sagging. I wasn't necessarily worried about the sagging. It was too big of a book. Like, so the book itself would just try to shut on you. I think they've kind of finally figured out exactly how big a book needs to be. But it does have a little bit of bleed through. Not as much as some of the others in recent years. Let me just see if I can find. But there is some bleed through happening, especially like in lighter colors or, of course, whites. But that's it. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this omnibus, don't forget to check out our sponsors. BD Cosmos, the Canadian leader in graphic novels. They have a physical storefront in Montreal, Quebec, and their website, bdcosmos.com, offers 25% off your order of over $99 or more, and free shipping everywhere in Canada for every order of $200 or more.
Their shipping care is exceptional. Your books will stay cozy through the rough Canadian weather and arrive to you in near mint condition.
After checkout, let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way, and you'll be added to the monthly $25 gift card raffle. Entries are valid for new and returning customers.
Don't be afraid to call or email them. Ask them questions. Their staff is always happy to help guide you towards the right purchase. Visit their website, bdcosmos.com, for more. BD Cosmos, with rewards and raffles taking care of customers in Canada. Eh?
CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count, and build of this book. Let me know in the comments down below if you have volume 1 and you've been waiting for this book, if you love this era of X-Men, and if you would love to see Chris Claremont's second return to X-Men on Uncanny. I would love to see that collected because we already have, his original run and we have Revolution. Yes, I would love to see him come back to X-Men again. And yes, we need that omnibus so bad. It's got beautiful artwork by Alan Davis, then later on Chris Pacello. But anyway, I'm getting way ahead of myself. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any questions. And that's it, everybody. Check us out on Patreon and Spreadshop. Amazing ways to support the channel. Stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.